Alright, today we're going to continue our look at the project billing screens, and this time we're focusing our attention on the transaction screen. So this screen is surprisingly straightforward considering its importance. And as you might imagine, the purpose of the transaction screen is not only to display all of the transactions on your project, but also to be able to edit them, to enter new transactions. This will be the heart of where you will put in any payments you receive, any retainers, credits you might issue, anything like that will all be done here. And we'll start at the top and work our way down. And as you can see, much as it was in the invoices screen from our previous video, we do have a filter here. So if you do have a very long running project with an extensive list of transactions, you can filter this list by date range if you need to locate a particular transaction to perhaps look at its details or perhaps make a change or delete it or whatever you might need to do. So we'll start with what's displayed first. It's pretty straightforward, but obviously we have the date of the transaction, the invoice number that the transaction is applied against, any notes you might have associated with it, and then the actual values. If it's a payment, you'll see a value only in the payment column. If it's a credit, you'll see a value only in the credit column. If it's a retainer, it actually depends. If it's a contribution to a retainer account, as in your customer has just paid you a retainer you've asked for, you will see a positive number, such as this one, only in this retainer column. If, on the other hand, you're actually making a payment to an invoice from your retainer, you will actually see a value in the retainer column and in the payment column, indicating that yes, the money is coming from the retainer and it is going towards a payment, and it will go towards whichever invoice is displayed there. And then the refund column, we're actually not going to touch on that because this field is no longer used and will be removed in a previous or in a future version of the software. Retainers now handle issuing refunds, so we won't be covering that. As far as how to actually create them, we're going to go over the specifics of how to create them in detail in a future video. We'll actually cover how to make each of the three different types of transactions. But this is the screen that you will go to, and in case you miss it, I got there just from going to our handy dandy action menu here and going to New Transaction. So on this screen, first and foremost, what we want to do is look at our Invoices or Projects button. This is very important. We always want to make sure we're absolutely clear on which of these two lists we're going to, because different transactions are applied in different places. And if you apply the money to the wrong place, it will affect your AR in a negative way. So the general rule of thumb here is all payments go to invoices. All retainers, if we're contributing to the retainer, in fact you can see it actually grays out our invoices button. Payments to our retainer go directly to the project. And the program is intelligent here, so if you select this option and you already entered a retainer on this project, the program is in fact smart enough to know that, and it will throw up a small prompt and ask you, are you taking money from the retainer or are you putting money into the retainer? So if this was a retainer contribution, we would leave it on projects and we would fill in our values and apply the money. If this was a retainer payment to an invoice, the program would automatically know that. We would click we would click from on the prompt because we're taking money from the retainer, and this invoices button would be available. And much like just an ordinary invoice payment, we would put in our values, we'd make sure we were on the invoices list, find the one we want, and apply the money. Credits, same thing as payments. We frequently are asked, well, how do I apply a credit if I do not currently have an open invoice to apply that credit against? And the answer is you don't do that. If something happens during the course of the project and you ultimately decide to give your customer a credit, but you don't actually have an invoice to currently apply that credit to that's still open, you've basically created a liability for yourself. And that liability is covered by turning it into a retainer, and then at such time when you do have an open invoice, you can then use that retainer to actually pay that portion of that invoice. And then again, refunds are no longer used. This is actually a deprecated function and will be removed in a future version, as is this export function that we see right here in the corner. Again, we will go over in detail in a future video all the exact steps to go through to actually do this, but for now, this is the simple look at the transaction screen and everything it can do.